So this is El Malaika, a boat that I found in 2001. I'd gone down to the Vaal Dam, which is a water reservoir about an hour from Johannesburg, to look for the keel for a little buccaneer that I was going to fix up and restore. And El Malaika was standing with a keel in the mud, with a mast on deck, but in pretty bad shape and some burnt stuff on the deck. So basically she was built in 1933 in Scotland by McGrew and Company, and King George V of England commissioned her to be a gift to the Sultan of Zanzibar from the British people, from Britain. And the Sultan at the time wanted a small day sailor, and this was built for him. Okay, so far work that had been started on, that I got started on, was repairing frames that were cracked and broken. The boat spent a lot of time on fresh water, and a lot of the damage was done because the planks opened up and it allowed rainwater to get in and then caused obviously rot. So I started, some of them have been scarfed on, planks have been laminated, and some have been steam bent. So that's where it started, and I've just tried to do like say one or two at a time to keep the stability of the boat. I have had some guys that are quite experienced have a look, and they're quite amazed at how, in what good shape she is anyway. And that she was, you know, the way she was built was very strong, and that's why she's lasted so long. All right, so then just according to the arrangement plan that we're looking at here of the original day sailor, it seems to be that a lot of the frames for the deck were changed when Terry Griffiths converted to a cruiser. And he made it narrower there as a cockpit there, and you'd be sitting on the deck. There weren't those seats, they were taken out. And then he changed it and he built the, so there was more space inside with a higher roof covering over the cabin and then up to the cockpit there. So this would have to be changed, you know, to get it back to the original fast day cruiser that it was. All right, so yeah, this rudder was a replacement rudder because the rudder got damaged when Dave Sutherland was sailing it down from Tanzania to Durban. And then this was the replacement rudder that was fitted. Also, the other things that need to be done is we've got part of the rigging is here, but the original mast was a hollow wooden spar that Ewing McGrew actually had a company doing hollow spars. He did hollow wooden masts, booms, and even hollow spars for the biplanes in the war. So the original mast, hollow wooden mast, broke in the 1940s, and the South African Army based in Dar es Salaam replaced it just using a solid wooden pole, basically. The fittings are all on it, and that's what the boat came with. But it was in a bad state, and it started rotting, and that. So I just cut that up, thinking that sometime we'll build another hollow wooden mast to be as the original mast, because I think it was changed a bit when the South African Army just made this for the Sultan. So that needs to be done. Mast. There is a boom, but I also think it's not the original boom. There's also maybe a boom made by then. And there are sail tracks, so we'd have to find that out and probably make another boom as well. And the sails. The sails need to be replaced and try and make sails of the period that would look better once it is restored. Right, so I think this is what got my attention first, is when I drove into the boatyard at Vaal Cruising Association. El Malaika was standing with a keel stuck in the mud, and I first saw this transom, and it's just, I think, beautiful. The boats from that era, from the 1930s or 20s and 30s, with these long counter sterns and the long bows. As you can see, El Malaika is 32 foot long, but the waterline's only 25 foot. Yes, sorry, this is the waterline marked here that they've actually scribed it into the wood. So that whole stern, that's all a counter stern that's out of the water. And what's quite amazing about El Malaika is these planks are, you can see, I mean, they're flat here, and it's just one plank. There's no joints. It goes from here, and then it twists to go flush, and then goes up, and then twists back to the bow again. And the planks were initially corked when they used corking inside, and then the putty put on top. Now there's different ways to do it, so it'd have to be worked out what to do there. There was a lot of damage done in places like this where there was stainless steel or galvanized bolts were put in and caused the wood to rot. So those repairs started to get done with little pieces scarfed and then epoxied in. There's a lot of that. Where the old copper nails and rivets were, there's not as much damage at all. And also, Al Malaka's still got the original lead keel. From what we work out, that probably weighs about 2 tons. It's the full length of the keel. And that's bolted on by the keel bolts in various places here. And then there will also be steel floors that get attached to there to hold the frames in. And then we've got some up in the front. And these are all just temporary, just to hold it while it was being moved. Yeah, so now we'll go on and go and have a look at the other stuff. We've got a lot of information, magazines, receipts, articles about Al Malaka that we can have a look at. After I'd found out who owned Al Malaka, I contacted Mr. Neil Down. He was in his 80s at the time. And over the phone, he told me that the boat was the boat that King George V of England had commissioned McGrew and Company to build, and had given to the Sultan of Zanzibar as a gift from the British people. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, this has got quite a story. Can it be that? And then I started looking into it and trying to find out more information. And out of that, I found out quite a few things. And one of them was in articles in Classic Boat, they had a whole series on articles on McGrew and Company in Scotland. And it starts with part 1 through to part 3. But in part 2, where they show the guys that were working there in 1931, some of their other builds. And there she was. There's a photograph in this part of the magazine that is of the Sultan of Zanzibar's luxury yacht, Al Malaka, which was built almost exclusively out of teak. And that was a photograph that he also had given me a copy of in a whole file that he gave me. And when we realized that it is the actual boat, he got that passed down the line from Terry Griffiths. And then a friend of mine found, she had to buy a little batch of books. There's 4 Yachting World books. And the one that's dated Friday, October the 13th, 1933, has a full article on Al Malaka. It was the first time she was advertised, as I think they were hoping to get more orders for this particular boat. But there's a whole story about her in this magazine. And this is the actual original magazine that I've got. And then in 2012, in May 2012, I flew over to Scotland as they were having a McGrew boat, a celebration of McGrew boats. And I went to the Gairloch where Al Malaka was built and made contact with the people running the regatta. And this little brochure has got all the boats that are entered. And right at the end, because I just mentioned the boat, it wasn't there, but they put an article about, and they called it The Sultan's Queen by Gordon Drysdale. And that's a very interesting article that he wrote, also just telling the whole story. But it starts off with, there's one name that stands out in the McGrew build list from the period of between the wars, which is Al Malaka, in a 2-decade period that is peppered with one designs, after most of the Gairlochs, after the Scottish Islands, but before the Dragons, there she is. So it's like a really nice introduction to Al Malaka and a story about her. So that was done then. Other information, this was passed down by Neil Down. There's a whole lot of plans and sketches and layouts and sail, the rigging specs are all here in various different plans. There are some originals and some copies. I've used this before. There's an original which is from 1933, 31st of the 1st, 1933, and it's the arrangement plan of Al Malaka. And then there's a whole lot of other paperwork and things about when it was registered in South Africa, when she was coming down from Tanzania. It's a bill of entry into Durban to bring it into South Africa that when Dave Sutherland brought it in. And then just a whole lot of papers of all the work when the boat came down, work done to the boat, mooring fees, a whole lot of stuff all about Al Malaka, all kept here. So that's all there. Collected a fair amount of interesting stuff about Al Malaka. And he has also the Certificate of British Registry, So Malika wasn't registered when she was gifted to the Sultan. So Terry Griffiths, when he bought her in early 1960s, he had it registered in the British Registry. Okay, so basically I've got to the point now, I've had Malika for just over 20 years since I first got her and brought her home when I lived in Honeydew. And the dream was to have her repaired. Various things happened along the line. And then when I did start in Knysna building it, I was just doing it basically, I wasn't qualified to do it, just doing it by trying to learn and do things. And things have changed now that I didn't really have the time or the means to actually carry on with the restoration. So that's why I'm hoping to put it out there to find another way of doing it. And maybe there's somebody out there that would be interested or have an idea of how we could take this further. I just feel that it shouldn't just rot away in a barn or a storage area, and it would be great to have on the water. Yeah, so there's lots of things that could happen, and if anybody's got any ideas or wants to get involved, let me know and maybe we can do something. It would be great.